Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us back again, our real estate expert, the NoteHouse.us, his company, buys and sells $100 million of real estate and notes and distressed property a year. We're talking about Fabian Calvo. Fabian Calvo, thank you for joining us today on USA Watchdog.
Thanks for having me, Greg. It's always a pleasure.
Well, you know, in the pre-interview, you were talking about some of the biggest things happening in real estate, and let's just fast forward to this situation going out in Nevada, the Bundy, I think it's the Bundy Ranch, where he's having hundreds of his cattle being, confiscated by the Bureau of Land Management. He's been grazing his cattle on this Nevada land for years and years, decades, I guess, and all of a sudden, the BLM is coming and kicking him out. What's going on with this kind of act? Why do they want to attack a farmer and start killing hundreds of head of his cattle?
Yeah, you know, this story's been going on for now a little bit over a week, and literally actually much longer. And the hair on the back of my neck, Greg, it was standing up when I was doing a lot of research and speaking to some of my contacts on Wall Street. But so the BLM, it's part of the Department of Interior. Well, you look at the Department of Interior, what have they been doing? Well, they've been, through the BLM, confiscating land and going after land, for example, in the high desert in California, all over the place. And what I'm hearing is that, they're basically categorizing all this land for future collateralization, to sell off. I mean, look, in the Weimar hyperinflation, right? After the hyperinflation, what did they back their currency with? They backed it with mortgages. They backed it with land. This is a total possibility here in America, but here's what's even more sinister and crazy. The Department of the Interior, which the BLM is part of the Department of the Interior.
Bureau of Land Management.
Yes, Bureau of Land Management. They have been approving, because I know one of the gentlemen who financed one of these deals, provided the capital for it, structured the whole entire deal. They have been providing sweetheart deals for Chinese investors. I have a laundry list here of deals that have been approved in the last year, whether it's Smithfield, a gigantic hog producer, the #1 hog producer in America, all of the farmland that they own in America. Overnight, the Chinese became the #1 employer in a ton of cities across the U.S., but it doesn't stop there. Solar companies, solar fields are getting approval for to build them. Chinese investors are. The battery companies that they've taken over. I mean, the list goes on and on. People can just check this out. And the USDA also gave them approval to import their chickens. Why is this happening? Because it is an end-of-the-road situation where it's just like America was with England when we were exercising leverage over them around World War II, because we were the largest creditor nation. Now we're the largest debtor nation. We owe all this money to the Chinese. And in order to not have them dump our debt, we're basically allowing them, through the Department of the Interior, who is stealing rancher land, killing their cattle. They're literally selling out America, and this is probably one of the biggest stories going on right now in the world of real estate, I believe, Greg.
So they're going to take and collateralize, sell off America, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
they're
look,
in the process of selling off America.
They are literally in the process of doing this. I think this Bundy Ranch situation could be like the Lexington and Concord of the Second American Revolution. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, but I mean, look, people are waking up, I think, to this insanity. And when this information gets out, I mean, look, these people, in essence, drew first blood here, Greg, and we need a peaceful, show of we're not going to take this. We literally need a Rambo that's going to take these people on, the Rambo of the financial sector, to expose their crimes and what's going on.
Well, what's the implication down the road if we don't wake up and do something? Is China just going to own big swaths of America?
Well, again, people need to understand that this isn't like a theory that's happening. This is an actual fact. They could just, all you need to do is Google U.S. Interior Department, China approves or something like that, and you'll see all of these stories come up and things that they've been approved of, deals that they've been approved of. I think you look back in history and you see when world reserve currencies are shaky, whether it was the French, whether it was the English that had the world reserve currency, you see that in order to keep that world reserve currency and keep that Ponzi scheme up that the U.S. basically has, as long as possible, they need to be able to collateralize stuff and do all these sweetheart deals so that the country that basically has us over a barrel, in this case China, doesn't dump our debt. And one more point on this too, Greg. Just last month, we had this BBC documentary where Hank Paulson, former Secretary of Treasury, comes out and says, in the '08 crash, He was on the phone with the Chinese pleading, that's his word, not mine, pleading for them not to dump U.S. mortgage-backed securities, which in all of this QE, make no mistake, a lot of that MBS, mortgage-backed securities that the Fed was buying, was a lot of the garbage they sold to China. They're now buying it back, and it's literally worthless garbage pieces of paper.
Oh, so that's what this, whatever it be, well, now I think it's about $25 billion a month going to the banks, buying their toxic mortgage debt. Isn't that right? Isn't that the now number? It's $55 billion total, $25 billion a month?
Yeah, that's the number, the number they tell the general public. I don't believe any of those numbers. I mean, how do you have, look, last week we had interest rates go down, 30-year rates, 15-year rates went down. How do you have rates going down? And Yellen has said, look, I'm going to keep rates low. We got to keep them really low. They understand in order for there to be any recovery, there needs to be a real estate recovery. How do you keep rates low if they're not buying long-term debt or continuing to buy debt? It makes absolutely no sense. And I think they're absolutely lying. Not only are they lying.
They're lying about how much they're buying. They're buying way more.
I know for a fact they have been. I mean, I know from people that are in closed door meetings with the Fed that when they were saying 85 billion, it was really 125 billion. I've been saying that for at least 6 months.
What is it now?
Well, now I don't know if it's 125 still, but bottom line is I don't believe anything that they're saying. It's much more because the economy hasn't gotten any better. And so, look, their balance sheet's now over 4.3 trillion, the Fed's. And here's another point people need to understand, because I always say all of these stories are connected, Greg. You have these banker suicides, these banker murders. They're being killed. It's pretty obvious now. I mean, look, suicide prevention people will tell you, you don't get so many people jumping off a cliff or jumping off a building. That's not even the way people commit suicide. It's like 10% of people who commit suicide jump off a building. Anyways, look, the people on Wall Street that I speak with tell me that it's totally not only plausible, some of them believe these people are being murdered to prevent an economic Edward Snowden from exposing the financial fraud and crimes that are taking place. The system is scared to death, and that's why I'm saying we need a financial Rambo to come out and literally expose what they're doing. And you're talking, you and I often talk off interview, and you ask me, well, what's the black swan that could, derail their pump and dump schemes and everything else you got going on for the real estate market? Because the real estate market, I got a lot to say about that too, but, and it's the fraud being exposed. I mean, look, if you have an economic Edward Snowden come out and expose the fraud of the derivatives, the credit default swaps, the manipulation of interest rates, it's game over. I mean, you need trust in the financial market for it to operate. And if trust blows up, it's game over. And Greg, you see the cracks already taking place. The market plunged 2% yesterday. The NASDAQ did at least. Last Friday, market was down. In my opinion, I think people are really getting shaky as far as the trust in this financial market.
Well, let's just go ahead and fast forward to what's going on in the real estate market. And Janet Yellen, I mean, she looked like she was going to come out and be a little more hawkish at the beginning of the year. And as of just recently, she comes out and says, we're going to keep, the Fed minutes come out, and we're going to keep rates low. Doesn't the dollar blow up at some point? Also, Blackstone, one of the people you do business with, is saying, prices have risen so much we can no longer buy a house, renovate a house, and rent it out for a profit. He says, especially in California, that market is pretty much done. We're done with, and some of these guys are now in the process of starting to sell some of this real estate, according to the stuff I read. Is that what you're saying?
Well, bingo. You just hit the nail on the head. So what's happened? They're not stopping to buy. Their plan is that they're going to start selling off. Like, for example, Blackstone's the biggest buyer second biggest buyer is a company called Carrington. They own over 30,000 rental units, in America. They also own a very large mortgage, servicing company, which, oh, by the way, they just started to say, we want to start to do subprime loans. So this is exactly what I've talked about now in every interview we've done. It's the pump and dump of the U.S. housing market. After the 2014 election, people go back and see the interviews we've done in the past. Not to pat my own back, but I've been right on with what's happened with the real estate market. So what are we seeing now? Wells Fargo, Skyline, Carrington, all of them, and FHA, all of them doing loans now between 550 and 600 credit scores. FHA is just doing crazy, no money down loans. But all of them are saying, We want to start doing subprime. Wells Fargo is the leader in starting back into subprime. After 2014, you're going to see subprime loans roar back with style. That's what all these guys that have gobbled up all this real estate, that's when you're going to see this last real big push in the real estate markets. So in the next couple of years, I believe, unless there's a black swan that takes place, you're going to see real estate markets go absolutely buck wild.
Oh, I mean, go up in price. I mean, you'll see,
go up in price.
You'll
Absolutely,
see prices go up.
5 to 10%, or maybe more in some markets. I mean, in places like California, like you mentioned, New York, are being fueled by foreign investors who are swooping in as well. Real investors that know what's going on are scared to death, Greg, of the imploding U.S. dollar, and just the current financial situation.
And they're looking for any tangible asset, even if it's real estate, even if it goes down in value and interest rates go up there. Well, at least I'll have some protection. Is that their idea? Bingo.
You got it. That's absolutely right. That is their idea. Look, not everybody's a gold investor, a silver investor. Some people will say, well, hey, real estate's a commodity. Real estate's a tangible hard asset. I could rent it out. People will always need a place to live. I memean, so yeah, that's what's going on with these foreign investors buying into the market. So I really would say that they're not so much the ones that are, the ones that are going to be involved in the longer term blow up of the market. And by blow up, I mean just prices going crazy until we have another full blown collapse. But I think that collapse of the next housing market will be coupled with the dollar collapse, the stock market collapse, the bond collapse. Everything's going to blow at once.
Well, do you think this Russia deal, because you've got to be watching this Russia deal, and they just did another deal just this, recently saying that they're going to have a yuan bond, and which everybody's, they're going to, it's another move away. They've cut deals with India. They've got gas deals with the UK. They've said, hey, we're going to sell our oil and natural gas in rubles. It seems like this move went from a snail's pace under the radar to boom with this Ukraine thing. It got kicked into a couple of higher gears. And now Kerry is saying, the Secretary of State, we're going to have more sanctions, which I think is going to do nothing but kick the move away from the dollar into a higher gear. Could that be one of these black swans that kiboshes the real estate market before 2016? Like you're saying that you could probably be after 2014. It could in the next several months. Could it kibosh real estate? Could Israel drop in a daisy cutter on Iran's head? Could that or whatever some attack, or could Iran attacking Israel or whatever? Some blow up in the Middle East. Could that start a cascading effect of the dollar and the real estate market?
Well, I think all of those are, I don't think Israel necessarily will strike without U.S. approval, but I think the Russia situation is very interesting because, a lot of people that say, well, Russia's not going to dump, U.S. debt, or although they already have, people say in December they were the 9th largest holder of U.S. debt. Point is that a lot of people will believe, Greg, that, Russia's a natural gas company. Really, if you look at it, their economy's a $3 trillion economy. We're a $17 trillion economy. They can't hurt us. They're living in the normalcy bias, okay? Just in 2008, it came out, BBC exposed this. The Russians with the Chinese, and people can look this up and check it out, they teamed up for a bear raid on Wall Street, on the dollar, and on a lot of financial institutions that led to the 2008 crash. It was a run by the Chinese and the Russians. Now, the Chinese kind of backed out of this. They didn't go full force with it, but the Russians did. And let me tell you, it's really known that the Russians and the Chinese with cyber attacks, they can take down the financial market, I believe. In fact, a lot of these blackouts we've seen around the world, a lot of people believe they were done by the Russians and the Chinese, particularly the one that happened in the late 1990s, early 2000s in New York City. Point is that I think that you're going to see a super alliance form. You're already seeing it form between the Russians and the Chinese. They've been allies 100 years, but they had a little falling down in the early 60s. But now I think you're seeing that they recognize the Ponzi scheme of the U.S. dollar is going to blow up. And if they don't begin to get away from the dollar and set up their own bilateral trade agreements, set up their own kind of deals with all these countries, they're going to have revolution on their hand when, the dollar blows up and inflation, is exported by hundreds and hundreds of percent around the world. So they better do something right now. And I think Putin, like him or hate him, is smart enough to recognize this and is smart enough, I think, smart enough to challenge U.S. dollar supremacy.
But if something happens with some uh-oh moment, some black swan. This could derail the plans of these guys because we've had the pump, and now we're going to get ready for the dump. For the big investors are getting ready. They're already thinking about sell, sell, sell. Not buy, sell, sell, sell.
That's right. As you see prices continue to go up, and you see, this is what people need to look out for.
Well, you sent me a link saying that they're going to start accepting 550 FICO scores. I'm thinking,
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean,
what's the top FICO score, 850?
I think 850, I think some could be higher than that. But the point is that, most people have a credit score of 700 or so, or if they do, that's always been like, hey, you got to put 20% down. It's always been conventional. Here's the thing. Think about it. After the housing crash in '08, just 6 years ago, Greg, people were like, oh yeah, well that makes sense. If you give money to people with no credit, they had a bankruptcy, they don't pay their bills on time, and you give them a loan, chances are, if they have no skin in the game, they're going to walk away when prices collapse and the bank's saying, hey, your payment just doubled, keep paying me. Of course they're going to walk away. But they're doing it all over again just 6 years later, which to me shows you that we don't have sensible people running the economy, or not even running the economy, but just, creating policy. It is our government, in essence, has been hijacked really by criminal bankers and criminal politicians that are creating this environment. I believe these guys have to know this is all going to blow up, that this is no way of running a free market economy.
Fabian Calvo, thenotehouse.us. Thanks for coming on and enlightening us and giving us the real street-level view of what's going on in the real estate market. I know you're sitting across the table from people who are buying 200 or 300 houses at a pop or doing big deals. Thank you for coming on and letting us know what's going on.
Thanks a lot, Greg. It's always a pleasure.